this is how we ride, this is how we do. Riding mud, sliding up higher in the groove. Don't give a damn about the cash we're spending. With the time we got, we choose to play it on the go, to stay out on the run. We all high, wide, and some. Ain't telling you what's right or wrong or what to choose. Hey, but this is how we do. This is how we do. Out on the dirt ovals we play, life in the bright lights with no shade. So letting her go, letting her with the motor singing in the grandstands ringing. It's hard to put it all in words, but this is how we ride, this is how we do. Riding mud, sliding up higher in the groove. Don't give a damn about the cash we're spending. With the time we got, we choose to play it on the go, to stay out on the run. We all high, wide, and some. Ain't telling you what's right or wrong or what to choose. Hey, but this is how we do. This is how we do. Out on the dirt ovals we play, life in the bright lights with no shade. So letting her go, letting her with the motor singing in the grandstands ringing. It's hard to put it all in words, but this is how we ride, this is how we do. Riding mud, sliding up higher in the groove. Don't give a damn about the cash we're spending. With the time we got, we choose to play it on the go, to stay out on the run. We all high, wide, and some. Ain't telling you what's right or wrong or what to choose.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are live here on YouTube, and it's a very interesting day that we have in front of us. We've had a very interesting day, actually. Did a lot of things with Cody Summer, I guess we were corrected. It's Summer. Cody Summer, the Gateway Dirt Nationals promoter. We've been putting out tons of content from that interview that we did with him, and we're not stopping. This week is going to be interesting. We got a really special guest on tonight that I think is going to make a lot of moves and a lot of headway, and going to be a household name very soon in a lot of different industries. And tomorrow I plan on doing a talk with Donnie Shots. We got a whole week of content coming. Not only these full talks, we're going to be splitting them up. I do all the work myself. Once again, I got to be splitting them up, taking all these little segments, little clips, like I did with the Cody Summer things today. Talked about the Gateway Dirt Nationals future, XR scheduling on top of Gateway. If you ain't checked that out, go to the channel. It's some of the videos we just released today. But on the phone right now, we have a driver that caught my eye. Every time I go to the West Coast, a driver catches my eye. Those who have been paying attention originally a couple years ago, it was Justin Sanders, who I actually caught his eye at first, but then he caught my eye too. Another driver named Devin Borden that I caught an eye over there. And luckily, we all kind of worked to get him over into PA. And now Kalib Henry. Kalib, are you on the line of this conversation?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, so I didn't really know who the hell you were. It's hard to keep up with the West Coast guys because there's so many hitters out there, especially on the short tracks. It seems like a different guy can win every week. I kind of saw what you were doing at the Gold Cup, and it seems like it's just really hard racing over there. We did our interview as well at the Gold Cup at Chico. But talk about yourself just a little bit, who you are, where you're from. A lot of people haven't really heard of Kalib Henry. We talked about it in the interview we did. There's so much talent over there, and it gets no national recognition. And it's hard sometimes. I mean, you get the West Coast recognition, but outside that West Coast, you just don't really get recognized no matter how good, bad, or indifferent you are. Talk about your little background a little bit, and then we'll get into some more details and some stuff going on with you.
Yeah, so my dad put me in an outlaw cart when I was 7. Raced off and on here and there a little bit until I was 12, and that's kind of really when things took off because my dad was still full-time in the sprint car as well. He started racing, and that's kind of what got me into it. And at 12, I kind of, went week to week, and we ran as often as we could and picked up a few championships in the go-kart. in the 250 class, and then moved up to the open class. And I actually got hurt really bad at the beginning of, or middle, I would say. I think it was 2013. I shattered my ankle and my foot in an accident racing in the go-kart, and that kind of sidelined me for about half the season. And,
well, hold on. How old are you? What's going on?
I was 2013, so I would have been 13 when that happened.
Okay.
Or 20, no, excuse me, that was in 2014. So I was 14 when that happened. And like I said, that sidelined me for about half the season, and came back actually really strong and won the Perpetual Trophy night at Cycleland, and then ran up front and ran really well at some other races. And then in 2015, I ended up winning the Open Championship at Cycleland, and that, caught some attention, and ran a handful of races at the end of 2015 for a couple different car owners that I was, blessed to given the opportunity of that. And then in 2016, my dad and a couple other, family relative friends helped get us our what we call our family car going. And I ran all of 2016 in that at Silver Dollar with a 410. And then at the end of the year, I got sponsored 360 from Vern Morrison, and we ran a handful of 360 stuff, and wasn't able to seal the deal on any wins that year. But I was, ran second a few times and ran top 5 quite a bit, and ended up getting the Rookie of the Year up in Chico. And then 2017, was able to run for a couple different car owners, and kind of the same through 2018 and 19. Got my first winged win in 2018 with Rudy Warrington down at Petaluma Speedway, and then that's kind of when things just started kind of coming together for myself, and was able to start finishing races that I up front and putting the whole night together. That kind of seems to be the deal out here. It's really hard, and you need a lot of luck on your side to not only start the night off good, but finish it good as well. Like you said, pretty much, most of the guys in the main event can either run up front or win. So I think competition out here is just super stout.
Well, and it just doesn't get that clout that, if you did half of what you were doing out there in Pennsylvania or somewhere, Ohio, you would be getting a little bit more attention, it seems. You only have the 2 outlaw swings. You don't really have an all-star-ish series. You have King of the West, which is basically the guys who can afford to travel. It's still the same guys at a regular race, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're running the West thing out here, I feel like you don't really get all that much recognition, because that's, we don't really have any weekly 410 stuff. You can run about 1 or 2 410 races a month, if that, because there's no weekly 410 stuff other than King of the West. Chico just started kind of coming back with some more 410 stuff, but it used to all be, that's what it was, until I want to say 2017 was, or 2018 was all 410 stuff, is when it switched to 360s. So it's, unless you're running with them every week or the full series, you don't really get the recognition that you deserve, in my opinion. The 410 stuff out here is very, very stout. You got the same 5 guys that are going to run up front and win, and then you'll get a couple, kind of, I guess, what you consider randoms in there. But the 360 stuff out here, I think second to none competition-wise. I mean, you go to a weekly race or one of our bigger races, and there's 60 to 70 cars, and 15 or 20 of them can win.
Now, something that I think people underestimate the difficulty it is to compete is the Cycleland competition. I've been there, obviously watched it a lot, visually streaming or online clips, but actually going there and seeing how competitive that scene is week in and week out. That is some pretty extreme training grounds for young kids.
Yeah, that's where I grew up racing. That was kind of where I shined at. I was really good there, and I went okay on the indoor stuff. I mean, I won championships at Lakeport and Red Bluff, and then I won championships at Cycleland as well. But I kind of think that was where my style shined was on, because I wouldn't say that Cycleland's a big track, but I mean, it would be kind of, I would think
to scale,
like,
Yeah,
it'd be kind of like racing on a 3/8 or so for a sprint car. It's got, we have wind speed and you got to carry momentum, and you can pull, you used to be able to slide somebody from way back and everything. And I think that's kind of where you learn to race. The indoor stuff, that's where you learn you got to get up on the wheel and be aggressive and everything. But the competition at Cycleland is just stout. I mean, all the people that came from out of California and run up front are big names, in my opinion. You got the Tanner Thorson, Rico Abreu, Kyle Larson, Brad Sweet. I mean, you can kind of just name off. I mean, I feel like California's it's got a gem of drivers, and it's just, once you got to be able to get back to the Midwest to make a name for yourself. And I feel like once you kind of break through that, get out of the West Coast and get to the Midwest or back to the Pennsylvania or Ohio, that's kind of what you have to do to make a name for yourself, unfortunately. And I'm very fortunate enough that I met you and got my interview and attracted some people, and kind of one thing led to another. But touching back on the Cycleland thing, I just think it's a great breeding ground for these kids coming up, and if you can race there and run up front there, I think you can transfer that over into a sprint car.
Well, and I've been to Cycleland in 2 times, and the one time I went was the showcase, and I'm not necessarily too critical of Cycleland as far as the racing. The only thing I'd be halfway critical towards in that, and it starts at just looking at the effect of it on the sport, is kind of the Kyle Larson effect. It seemed once he did get his shining stardom, and that kind of got to where he was in his career, it kind of seemed like the trend now in that area was you have to go to Cycleland. And I feel like a few older drivers, not necessarily drivers, but just older people, almost like football, it's like the guy who wasn't, he may have felt like he was older in life and his time has passed, but if he wants his kid to be the star on TV, he has to put him, he has to make him throw the football after work every day, or pushes them into practice, stuff like that. It almost seemed like there was a lot of parents that wanted to be at Cycleland, but not a lot of the kids that actually really wanted to be there. And I asked one of the moms, and she said that there was probably about 5 to 10 kids out of the hundreds that were there that wanted to be there. But, and I was saying, well, maybe that, they want their kid to be Kyle Larson more than the kid wants to be.
Yeah, and I mean, that kind of just comes from kid to kid. I mean, from the time I started racing, I mean, honestly, from before then, I've grown up my whole life racing. That's all I've ever known. Eat, sleep, breathe it. I mean, that's kind of all I've ever been around and done. And I mean, from the very first time my dad put me in a box stock, I hit the ground running. I actually almost won my very first race. Just didn't know actually to race back to the yellow. That was a new thing for me. I grew up watching sprint cars. That wasn't something that I knew. And I mean, at being 7 years old, that's, a little bit of a mistake or whatever. But I think that things have changed a little bit over the years. A lot of people come and go. You don't see the same faces start in go-karts and end up in sprint cars unless you have the money backing you. Prime example, in my opinion, is kind of even a little bit before my full force in the go-karts was the CVs. And I mean, that's honestly kind of the perfect example. I mean, they started kind of from nothing in the go-karts, and now Logan's a USAC star, in my opinion. And he's a damn good racer. Buddy Kofoid, Colby Copeland. I mean, there's a handful of them, and I just think that things have changed over the year. I think when I was coming out of the go-karts, I mean, I had Holly Shelton and Chase Magic and Colby Copeland and Logan CV, Tyler CV, and all these kind of guys coming up with me, and you tend to see a little bit of a gap. There usually tends to be a 5 to 8 year age gap before you get like kind of that next rush of drivers, and I haven't really seen it happen yet, and I'm not sure exactly why. I think you kind of get these guys that come in and want to go and race, but not sure the conditions or not sure the know-how.
I mean, do you think that's maybe because they saw like I said, that influence of, this was that kind of, I think Kyle kind of laid a path that in people's minds, at least, that if you go in this go-kart and then you do really well, you're gonna be able to possibly come to me. I say, and people have completely agreed, him and Bell sold so many Keith Kuhn midget rides because they thought that that's what would lead them into a NASCAR truck and opportunity to cup. I
think Kyle's a one-lifetime person, in my honest opinion. You're not going to see another one. He's not in our lifetime, at least.
I think you're better than Kyle Larson, personally. I do. I think you're better than him.
I mean, that can be hearsay. I'm not.
Racing is so opportunity based, though. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, how is it to say?
I'm not gonna sit here and say, hey, I'm as good as Kyle, or I could ever even be better, or anything like that. But I think, given equal opportunity to some other people, I could go pretty far in the racing thing.
And I think Kyle's a great racer too. I just think that since racing is so opportunity based, that you don't get. He's the greatest race car driver we've ever seen because we don't get to see all the greatest race car drivers because it is so opportunity based. I mean, a lot of people make the argument who can jump in a Silver Crown and a late model and in a midget and a cup car, and I'm like, well, my response is, who else gets to? No one else gets to jump in everything.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. It's not about what, a lot of the time it's about who. Being in the right place, the right time, being lucky when you need to be, and that plays a huge factor into it, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot of good kids coming up that, given equal opportunity, they could go really, really far. I kind of, towards the middle of this year, kind of wasn't sure where my racing career was going to go. I knew one of my car owners was not sure what we were going to do next year, so that was going to be a possibility at losing a ride, unfortunately, just for the fact that, it might have been his last year racing, not because I was getting let go or any sorts of reasons. But yeah, I think it boils down to having opportunities. And like I think a lot of kids coming up have great talent and everything, but there's not rides available often anymore. When my dad raced, so, late 90s into the 2000s, there was, rides. People, you'd get a phone call or you'd read about Doug Wolfgang or obviously Steve Kinser's kind of a different entity, or not really sure who else I could kind of quote on that.
Grown men, I think is what you're saying,
Yeah. I mean, there's just not that many rides. Everybody, oh, you got a ride. Well, yeah, I got to bring the checkbook, though. And unfortunately, I was never able to do that. I was able to bring hard work and knowledge from my dad that I had learned over time, as well as my pops, who was really, really good on the wrench and a damn good sprint car driver. But that goes back to, he probably could have made it pretty far if he was given the opportunities as some of these other guys. There's just, like I said, not very many rides available anymore. Everybody wants something in return.
There is rent-a-ride sprint cars over in West Coast, I believe, right? There's a couple of those.
Oh yeah, there's a handful of them. Not too many, but I mean, it boils down to just being, hey, I want you to cover fuel or tires or this or that. And I mean, for someone like myself and other people, I don't know too many off the top of my head, but I mean, I work 50+ hours a week, and I do that so I can go and enjoy racing and doing the things that I love on the weekend. That's, and I put my blood, sweat, and tears into who I race for and what I'm due, because like I said, I have never been able to have the checkbook back in me, and that's kind of what it boils down to nowadays, unfortunately. But I mean, I've been given the opportunity for next year, and I just told him, and he kind of came up the same way of, work for it, and the right opportunities will present themselves.
Well, you were just saying you didn't know where your career was going to go. How for the viewing audience, how old are you?
So I'm 23. I just turned 23 in September. And I mean, realistically, that's kind of getting, up there in a sense, which it's not old by any means, but to get that opportunity in the Midwest, you see all these kids, prime example is KKM, 14, 15, 16 years old on the on the USAC tour, and all these kids, Ryan Timms and Corey Day, they're 16 to 18 years old, and I kind of didn't know where my racing career was going to go, as of if I was just going to be a kind of a Cali kid and stay here, or if I was going to get, that breakthrough opportunity of being able to go back and race for somebody.
Well, it was funny, later that night after interviewing you, I ran into Ryan Timms, and we have we shit talk a relationship, and he's like, "Oh, what do you think? Who you talking about?" I was like, "Oh, I interviewed Caleb Henry. I ain't interviewing you." And I'm talking shit to him, obviously. And he's like, "Why this? Why that?" I was like, "Cause he's older than you and he's racing." He goes, "Why does that matter?" I'm like, "I got to give respect. We got to start giving respect and attention and clout and glamour to grown men racing sprint cars. Like, if we don't do that and we only give attention to kids racing midgets and Ty Gibbs of the world, that's going to destroy motorsports overall, because at the end of the day, what you're doing weekly in California or any dirt racing vehicle really is just as difficult to do, and the competition is just as stiff as any form of motorsport out there. So, I mean, I get it that people are just trying to give attention to young kids, because 9 times out of 10, that young kid has a very wealthy family behind him, and you're going to try to make some money off of covering him or giving him attention or opening doors. But at the end of the day, if we don't start giving that glamour and attention and respect to grown men in sprint cars, we're going to have talented race car drivers at 23 questioning where their career's even going to go. You're 23 years old. The whole Jeff Gordon and Kyle Larson, 5 years old in a go-kart, 14 in a sprint car, 20 in cup, is just not reality. That is opportunity, and more times than not, especially in today's world, monetarily based. So I just think that drivers like you, and even older than you, 25, I mean, I was on the Justin Sanders bandwagon for 2019 until this year. And it took that long for that guy to get attention. And look what he was doing over there, So,
yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I mean, we're out here on the West Coast. It's kind of unfortunate because we are a breeding ground for great race car drivers, in my opinion. But we're secluded. We're kind of...
You're on an island.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, I just kind of feel like it takes giving somebody a chance. I mean, Justin Sanders is a great race car driver. He works on all of his own stuff. He builds his own cars, works on his motors, and that's hard to find nowadays.
Right.
A lot of they just want a helmet bag carrier. Shows up with his helmet bag, drives the thing, and then goes home. Well, I'm in a good way. I've never had that luxury, which I'm thankful that I have it, because I know how to work on my own cars and build them and do motor maintenance and feel the things and all those things, because I had to. My dad pushed me to, and I wanted to learn. And that's kind of been my biggest thing that I can bring is, I can't bring money to it, but I can bring my work ethic.
Well, and don't you slightly feel like that, or I feel this way, and I feel like there's a big movement behind this, that the midget series is a farce. I mean, I don't honestly feel, out of maybe OEM manufacturer scouts, that anyone is paying attention to the midget series right now, because it is literally, most of the time, 80% at least of the field is kiddie rental karts. That's what it is. Yeah. It's
like
rich kid go-karts.
Everybody kind of wants a checkbook nowadays, and that's unfortunate, because it's kind of I wouldn't say ruined the sport, but it has not helped it. But that goes back to not having rides and people not knowing how to work on the stuff. And back in the day, I say back in the day, but 15, 20 years ago, everybody knew how to work on their stuff, and they had crew chiefs, which you kind of have to. As a driver, you can't do everything. That's just not possible. And it hasn't helped the sport with all these people kind of just showing up and driving. I think to be a great race car driver, other than a few, select, you need to be able to work on it. And, I I put my blood, sweat, and tears into the teams that I race for, and everybody that I'm with right now and have been with previously, I've created a friendship and a bond with them. For example, the McCulloughs and the Jensens. I've been with Jim Jensen since the end of 2017 to current, and I've been with Nick McCullough since the beginning of 2019 to current. And I mean, we're like family. We go to birthday parties and family events and spend time together and this and that, and I think that's, it's kind of, the racing thing's lost that. And I think it needs to get back to it, and it makes you appreciate it that much more. I mean, I love my car owners, my family, and I'm, forever thankful for all the opportunities that they've been given given to me. And I think that kind of goes a long way. And I think it would help the sport if people had more relationships like that, instead of just show up and drive and, oh, that's just a car owner. Like, I feel like you kind of got to get past that. I mean, some people, yeah, that's the type of relationship you'll have, but if you can get past that, then that's huge.
Well, it's funny you say 15, 20 years ago. I did a lot of research on the sport, and I think a big shift in this sport is when the payouts stopped making sense. Like when it was 1984 and Steve Kinser won $50,000 and a brand new truck is $5,000,
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. That's not $50,000 today when a brand new truck's $65,000. And I think what happened is the way car owners used to make money by putting a winner in the car. If you put a winner in the car when it's $50,000 to win and $5,000 for a truck, that's a smart opportunity. But I think in today's world, you can't make money winning. So you have to rent the cars out to guarantee making money.
Yeah, I mean, my car owner and I have talked about it. For us to go run weekly stuff sometimes just doesn't make sense. To be completely honest with you, out there on the West Coast, when it pays $1,600 to $1,800 to win a show that 15 guys can win at, it makes it hard to go every single weekend. But if you're not there, you get forgotten about. So my car owners and I kind of try and pick and choose and strive to run that much better at the shows that pay well. I mean, obviously, we all go to the racetrack to win. We don't go there to run second. But we strive that much harder to put our best foot forward at those shows that pay better, because that's what funds our racing throughout the season. Right.
Well, and let's obviously that is a situation that can't be really handled. I don't think I think that the relevance of the sport's pretty down too. I mean, the respect, everything else along those lines. But luckily, I guess, I've been able to help get some guys in some cards, and obviously you're getting this opportunity in the Midwest at Husets, which I've been saying for a long time. I mean, you can, if you want a hitter for a Husets style racetrack, I mean, just go to the West Coast and find one, or even Ohio. I think West Coast guys, any place where it's not just half mile drag races like PA is. I think a West Coast guy's gonna immediately just show up and start being up front. And Husets is definitely a racetrack I think that your driving style is going to get accustomed to very quick. What was the process? Obviously, I came over there. I ran into some guy named Kyle. I think it was Kyle who you spoke to at the track in Chico. What was the process of getting into this 10 car?
I never actually met Kyle at the racetrack. You gave me his phone number, and I've always kind of learned, the squeaky wheel gets greased. We'll touch back on that just real quick with Nick. I bugged Nick for, probably almost a year to race for him. And
is that the 17 car?
Yes. Yep. And finally, he said that one of the races I'd shown, that I had matured enough to be in his car and showed that I knew how to outrace guys. But going back to what we were back on right now is, I kind of kept bugging to get Kyle on the phone. And I think, second or third go, I got him on the phone, and we talked, and he knew Shane. I want to say he's the marketing guy of sorts for him. I'm not 100% sure. exactly what he does.
Good friends at the most, good buddies, you know.
Yeah, yep. And got me in contact with him, and I had called Shane I think 2 times, and then I got a hold of him on the second try or third try, and he wasn't sure what route he was going to go, and he said, hey, you know, we got a couple events that we're going to finish the year off with another driver. I had already committed to him, and you know, he's like, I want to stay true to my word, which as a driver is very respectful. When a car owner says that, hey, I committed to somebody and I'm going to keep my word, that goes
it means
a long
they'll do
way.
it to you. It's just like a woman, you know. If they'll do it to someone else, they'll do it to you. If they're loyal to someone else, they'll be loyal to you. You know, that's a good sign.
Yeah, so I kind of kept bugging him and was like, man, I'm trying to find some shows back there, but weather permitting, and you know, I mean, come end of October, it's into November, there's not exactly many sprint car races. So he had followed. I kept in contact with him, and then, you know, I talked to him off and on throughout the weekend at Trophy Cup, and then after Trophy Cup, you know, he's like, hey, get a hold of me and we'll try and work something out. And got a hold of him, and we ended up working it out that he was like, I really would like to come out here and you know, meet you face to face and talk about possibly what we want to do. And he said, I'm still not 100% sure which way I want to go, but I'd love to meet you face to face. And so he bought my plane ticket and flew me out to South Dakota. And I mean, within the first 10 minutes of talking to him, even on the phone, I kind of had a feeling it was going to go a good way. We hit it off right away and kind of gelled and had, you know, multiple things in common. And he loved kind of my background story on how I came up and all that, because it was fairly similar to his. And picked me up from the airport and went and showed me around South Dakota and showed me the house that he grew up in, and showed me his parents' house.
Did he show you Mount Rushmore? Because you know Mount Rushmore's right there, ain't it?
Yeah, so no, we didn't make it to Mount Rushmore, but he did show me around quite a few other places. Met his mom and dad, and then we went, and, you know, like I said, he kind of showed me around Rapid City, which is where he grew up, where he went to school, you know, etc. His business, the West River Trailer Sales and Service, and then took me out to his property, which is about 20 minutes outside of town. And he's got a really, really, I mean, it's a beautiful barn dominium on some property, and, you know, showed me around the race shop and kind of what his plans were. And then we talked on goals and what we wanted to do, and kind of kept going from there. And we went and met with his brother-in-law, and we went and had lunch and kind of really sat down and talked on, you know, what they wanted to do and what I wanted to do. And we all three shook hands and said, okay, well, it looks like we're going racing next year. And then, you know, so I flew out in on a Saturday, and then I flew out on a Sunday. So that all happened on Saturday. Him and I stayed up fairly late. I want to say it was 11, 12 o'clock, you know, just talking and watching races from back here in California, and, you know, talking about shocks and motors and cars and racing experiences and everything. And I mean, it was kind of one of those deals. It was easy. Him and I hit it off, and I mean, one thing led to another. And before I left, he's like, you know, I'd love to have you come out here full time next year and live here or work for me at the West River, and work here at night on the race stuff. And, you know, obviously the racing takes priority, but we'll keep you busy and pay you to work at the shop as well. And, we're going to go racing big time next year. And, you know, if all things plan out the way that we hope that they are, we'll run 35 to 40 races.
Right. And was he at all surprised at your car knowledge? I think a lot of people sleep on that, with how not just talented the drivers on the West Coast are, but how you know, technically sound they are. There's a lot of kids who had to grow up, you know, they had to figure it out on their own. You know, you go to PA and some of these other areas, and there's a lot of really talented drivers, or even some of these young midget drivers that we were talking about earlier, and they don't know how to do much. You know, they don't know how to do much. When Devin Borden went to PA and pretty much was working on the car all on his own, people were shocked. You know, they was blowing his mind. But that's a norm over there, where guys literally can not only just maintenance, but work and crew almost the car the entire night on their own.
Yes and no. I mean, he did some research, it sounded like, on myself and my dad and whatnot. And that was something that my dad instilled in me from a young age was, hey, I'm going to give you all the tools and everything you need to do, but you need to learn how to do this as well. And it was a lot of trial and error. I mean, my dad's been there for me since day one. I mean, he's been my go-to. But once my little brother started racing, more frequently, he couldn't go to all the races. And on all honesty, in the last 2.5 years, I've learned more by trial and error without my pops there than I did with him there. And it's helped me a ton, honestly. I mean, he still goes to a lot of the races, but he can't make it to everyone. And so, like I said, Shane, I don't think he was super surprised, but maybe a little bit, because I mean, I can pretty much do just about everything on them, from motor maintenance to squaring the car to setting shocks at the track. I mean, you kind of name it, I can do it. When Nick and I go racing, him and I, Carrie typically takes care of the motor unless my dad's 410's in there when he's not there. So I'll do all the fuel system and shocks. Nick does tires and Carrie does fuel and kind of whatever else we need. But I mean, the three of us, 90% of the time, we go racing by ourselves. We have the family, Nick's wife and mom and whatnot. And then, we have my dad and my mom, my little brother when they're not racing with him, go. But from the sounds of it, Shane was kind of the same way. His dad, when he turned 18, said, hey, I'm done funding your stuff. You either figure it out or you don't. And I mean, that's all Shane's known is race. And obviously that's carried him over to where he's at now. He's ran with Aaron Reitzel and himself and et cetera. So, I mean, he's kind of had to learn how to do everything on his own as well. His dad and him are super, super close. Kind of reminds me of my dad and I's relationship, of being there as much and as hard as he can on you, but letting you do your own thing as well. And a lot of it's trial and error. I think that's kind of what it boils down to.
Yeah, and the trial and error stuff will sometimes make you learn things, like you said, quicker than when you have no one there to really tell you there's an error coming. And then it also boils down to you find out how to do things in your own way. I think that's a big deal as well.
Yeah, Nick and I had struggled like 2 weekends in a row early in the night. Could not figure it out. Finally, I backtracked, and I was off on the left first shock 2 weekends in a row qualifying. I was one click further than I thought, which was a decent little jump. And it didn't bite us too bad, but that's just trial and error right there. And, not knowing, I've always had my dad there. Somebody will go and rip right through the middle, or, hey, this guy cheated it. Well, for a little while, Nick would just kind of push me over to the push-off lane and let me go. Well, him and I had a little bit of a team meeting talk and was like, hey, I need you to watch the track, but not just walk off. Like, I need you to, tell me, if this guy just rips a lap quicker than somebody else, or this guy just did that and it worked, helped him get into the transfer, I need you to come and relay that, because me sitting in the car, I can't see that all the time. And now a lot of the time what we'll do is Nick will just stand right there by the car, because I'll have him make, if I need to make a little change, or I see the tracks blowing off from one heat to the next or this or that, and I'll have his phone and just watch on flow. That's huge. Flow is a big deal for me now, because I can stay at the trailer, watch it on my phone or on the TV, and work on my stuff.
Well, now it has to be dirt vision, because you're going to Husets, which is a dirt vision track.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this Husets transfer? Obviously, it's a fast, high-banked, short-ish track, high-banked 3/8, almost like a Petaluma size, but high-banked. It is going to be a little bit quicker than most over there, maybe close to a Skagit. Not sure how much you went up there. But talk about what you're looking forward to at Husets. I don't think you've turned any laps there, but obviously it's a track that's very much covered, and you can see what goes on.
Yeah, I think Husets is kind of a combination of a few tracks out here. Maybe a little bit of Tulare with the wall right around it, Placerville with the high bank, and Chico. So I think I'll take adjustment to it pretty quick. I think it's going to be a big learning curve. I mean, I've never been on St. Louis Knoxville. I've never been there, actually. I mean, I've watched it and grown up watching it and always dreamt of going as a little kid. But I've never been to any of these places. I've watched a lot of video.
iRacing?
Sorry, what was that?
iRacing at least on there? Or?
No, I never really got into the video game stuff, to be completely honest with you. That was never really my forte. I just kind of study tracks on film and go from there and talk to people. You know, I'm decent buddies with Corey Eliason and Dominic Selsey and a lot of those guys. So, you know, I can get input from them. Shane Golobic is a pretty good friend. I actually live with one of his crew guys. So we all sit down and we'll talk, and Colby Copeland and all them have been to a lot of those places. But I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be a big learning curve, and I feel like I'll adapt to it pretty quick. For reference, like when we went to Australia, I'd never seen any of the tracks in person, watched some video, but it was kind of hard to get videos on them. And I mean, we were fast out of the gate. And so I think with Shane and I already kind of having a common ground and liking a fair amount of the same things setup wise and car wise, I think that we should be able to hit the ground running. And, you know, if not, it'll take a couple races and we'll get a good base and go from there.
What are some of the differences in equipment? Is it same motor, shock combo? What's some of the changes that's going on here?
Honestly, I've ran a little bit of everything, car-wise, motor-wise, etc. He's got Maxim chassis, Speedway motors, and Momentum shocks. Bars, honestly, I'm not 100% sure on the brand. I mean, I've kind of run a little bit of everything.
Bars are bars, but...
To an extent, yes and no. I mean, there's definitely differences, but jumping from as many cars to cars as I have to fill my schedule over the years, I've been able to adapt fairly quick. But I mean, I ran Maxims. I have not actually ever ran a Speedway, and then the shock that he's on, I haven't ran, but he's got a shock dyno, and he knows how to valve them, and has his guy at Momentum that he's really good friends with that can kind of build whatever we want. I've been on Canes the last 3 years and absolutely love the things. But if you can get the valving the same and get the graph to look relatively close in numbers, I think that we shouldn't have an issue. And he was totally open to, you know, if we need to change valvings and shocks or adjust shocks around what I like or what I feel, he was totally open to it.
Nice. Well, that's what you need in a car owner, and really, like you said, you already had the loyalty on board, so you ain't really worried about, you know, someone just coming in and taking your spot no matter what happens. What is some expectations though that, you know, you may have felt from him, or that you're going to be holding on to yourself going into next year, especially at Husets, which I think most people, including myself, would project you to do very well. You know, when I was out there. It was the team was honestly interested, I believe, in Justin Sanders, and obviously everybody was at that point after what he had just did in the Swindell car, and you know, Justin had some other stuff going on, and I was basically playing scout there for a little bit, and you know, you kind of jumped off my screen on how well you were doing against Timms. You know, Timms is very highly touted, and that's kind of his wheelhouse is the short quarter miles, and you were doing a real good job against him. It seems like I would project, and I think most would project, a guy from that region going to Husets and being fairly successful very quick.
Yeah, so he's a big trophy chaser. Loves to win races, loves to be up front.
And this is Shane you were speaking of?
What was that?
And that's Shane you're saying? Shane's a trophy chaser?
Yeah, so yeah, sorry, I guess I should use names here. Yeah, Shane's a big trophy chaser. You know, wants to go win races, wants to be up front and show his sponsors off. And I mean, that's everybody's goal. If we could walk away with a handful of wins and just be consistent, that's the biggest thing. Is it's so hard to be consistent nowadays with everybody being so even, and a lot of luck goes into it as well. But I mean, goals were to, you know, win a handful of races and run up front, and just kind of go from there. I mean, there wasn't super, super high, like, or not high, but there just wasn't, you know,
standards.
You know, I mean, I'd love to win the championship at Husets. I've never been. I don't know who's going to run weekly, but I think that if we stick it out and get going good early, I don't have a doubt in my mind that we can't go and not win the championship. He wasn't big on chasing points, but he said, we'll just kind of see how it goes once we get to the High Bank Nationals and go from there.
Well, and that's a big one too. $250,000 sprint car race. What are you thinking as far as that goes?
I've learned to I don't put a lot of pressure on myself. I've learned when I don't, that's the better I do. And that's what Shane and I touched on we had a pretty long conversation about it. Was I just, if everybody's happy and we're all in a good mood and we go to the racetrack and we're going to have fun and there's not a bunch of pressure on everybody, we're going to run up front. I've learned over the years that if you don't put a bunch of pressure on yourself and the car owner and the team and everybody there, then things just kind of seem to go better. And, you're going to have those nights where things don't go right or you tear up equipment or this or that. That's part of dirt track racing. But, Shane said...
Well, I was just going to say, there are some hitters over there. I mean, you're saying that you're not necessarily, there's no real true pressure, but... I mean, for the Houston, I'm just saying for like the Husets fan base, they I've been in the stands over there, and they're saying Brian Brown's scared to come up there on a Sunday night. They think they got some hitters. You're saying you could win a few races. They're like, who is this guy? I'm just saying.
I'm definitely not saying pressure as in competition wise. I'm saying pressure from myself.
Okay.
If I don't put overabundance amount of pressure on myself, then it's no big deal. I mean, I don't really get all that nervous, to be completely honest with you, racing. I've been doing it long enough that it's kind of just second nature. But I mean, I started on the front row of the Outlaw show, obviously that night at Gold Cup, and I was more nervous qualifying at Trophy Cup than I was starting on the pole of an Outlaw show.
Well, that's because Trophy or Tulare is in 1 and 2. You basically have to put your life on the line to qualify up front.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of it.
I really do think that the fear factor for any California driver is gone once you qualified at Tulare.
Yeah, I mean, once you get through qualifying, it kind of that is what it is. But yeah, going back on that, if I don't put a bunch of pressure on myself and I just go and do my own thing and I'm comfortable, then that's kind of what I was talking about. I mean, I know those guys back there, they're really good. That's kind of the same thing as if they were to come out here, like even with the Outlaws. They know when they come to California, they're going to have a handful of really stout guys.
Well, I mean, one guy up there who's done very well at Husets, I'm assuming you've done a little looking into who runs there. Justin Henderson, obviously, a really good driver who's been there consistently year in and year out. Have you got to see or look at some of the competition watch some races that goes on there? And have you noticed anybody jump at your screen like this is going to be a Justin Sanders type of guy I'm going to have to compete with or up front, contender that I'm used to?
Yeah, a little bit. I haven't done too much research just yet. I mean, this is still kind of setting in that this is going to happen. And I mean, it hasn't really been a month, and then hasn't even really been a month, and then been going through holiday and all that stuff. But I mean, come beginning of the year, I'll really sit down and watch some videos and talk to Shane and talk to a couple other people that I know back there on, hey, this is who this guy is, or this is who this is, kind of et cetera, because going to a new place, people I don't know, some guys, when they size you, they'll give you room. Other guys, hey, you better grab a handful of brake, because if not, they're not leaving you that room. And I like to know who I'm racing. I don't like to go in cold turkey, and I definitely like to know who I'm going to be around. The McCarls, I know them a fair amount. I've raced with Terry was my first one that I really raced with, and then I want to say Austin.
Yeah, Austin's the one who came out in the Country Time car.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously they're the promoters and whatnot. So, but not off the top of my head right now. I can't think of anybody. But I also haven't done a bunch of research yet or taken notice to who's ran a bunch there this last year.
Well, I mean, it is a pretty big stage. Husets, Todd Queering, owner promoter of the track. He puts a lot of money into that thing, and their goal is to make that thing. They envision a world where sprint car racing is, NASCAR. and that's where they're trying to build that. From my understanding, that's what they're trying to make that Husets stage into that premier spot. So, I mean, it's definitely a good place, and I really think this could be a, kind of a new path. Everybody seems to be trying to kill themselves to get to Pennsylvania to become a sprint car driver. Adding a new stage for guys, especially West Coast guys, to not go clear across the country would be a pretty big benefit, especially with the aspirations that Husets has, and obviously Knoxville already has its stone right down the road.
Yeah, and that's another thing, touching on Knoxville. I know Jamie Ball and a couple other guys that have ran there here and there. Jamie Ball is obviously a local, so I can talk to him and kind of lean on him for some advice. And Dom Selzy's ran there, and Shane Gallabit, Colby Copeland, kind of all those guys, and lean on them for advice and, hey, do's, don'ts kind of thing, and go from there.
All right, yeah, definitely. Now, you did say you ain't got to research too much about the Chili Bowl. I was looking in the comment section. Somebody was saying something how Cap Henry is better than Kalib Henry. They're just joking, apparently. But somebody said, no, Kalib is 20 times better. Another guy in here is talking about the Chili Bowl, and that's something that happened with you. The guy in the comment section, actually, he won his last race in a midget out in PA and then got kicked out of the car for Cap Henry. So this is actually very hilarious. But you did get, I believe it was announced today, you would be driving for Cruz Pedregon at the Chili Bowl.
Yeah, so this has kind of been a little bit of a work in progress. We started at the beginning of the year. Kind of a crazy small world. My cousin, who's been in and out of racing since he was a little kid, works for a construction company out here and became really good friends with the owner. I'm not sure exactly how they're linked, but is pretty good friends with Cruz and got me in contact with them. And then I was in contact with them off and on, and had I want to say it was a Friday off that I was able to get off of work, and Cruz got me a ticket, and I went down to Sonoma here, which is about an hour and a half from us, and went and met with them and talked about possibly running for him, that he had, one other guy he had his eye on and was waiting to kind of hear from him, but would love to possibly have me in his car, and kind of just went from there. And I can't remember the exact month that was in. I do. Just give me a second here. I can do a little bit of digging.
Well, it sounds like you got this ride based on talent, which is, if we want to talk about written sprint cars, written midgets, we touched on that. It's pretty hard to do to get a ride for the Chili Bowl, if you think about it. Yeah,
and I've had about probably 10 people ask me, oh, how much did that cost you?
Right.
And this and that, and I'm like, well, honestly, I said, to be completely honest with you, it's not. It's costing me my airfare to get there, and that's relatively it. Oh, here we go. So back in July, I went out and met with Cruz, and we had talked probably in the front of the Snap-on trailer for 45 minutes to an hour. Very, very personable, very smart, knowledgeable guy. Has been around forever. Just loves racing. That's what he does. Loves midget, loves the Chili Bowl, and that's kind of been, his thing, is he's always wanted to go and run up front there. And kept in contact with them, and he's like, hey, just keep in contact with me. Should know probably by the end of October, beginning the middle of November on kind of what we're doing. And randomly one night, him and I were just kind of chatting back and forth, and he sent me a text saying, hey, we're locked in. If you get your flights out here, we're locked in to go racing with you for the Chili Bowl. And my jaw kind of just dropped, because my roommate and I were sitting there talking about it, not 10 minutes beforehand, on how I'd never been and always wanted to even just be able to go. And my first time ever even going to Chili Bowl is going to be racing, and let alone for Cruz Pedregon. Kind of gives me a little bit of goosebumps, because he's just such a big name in the sport.
Yeah, well, and obviously the NHRA background kind of splicing different fan bases into the sport. How do you think that Chili Bowl thing's going to work out? Obviously, you don't get a lot of laps there. You don't iRace, so you can't get no track laps, period, not even digitally. What are you looking for and trying to prepare for that event?
Like I said, kind of referring back to a lot of videos and talking to the people that I know that have run a fair amount of midget stuff, Justin Grant and whatnot, as well as the Golubic and Copeland and Jason McDougal and Clinton Boyles and all those guys, kind of leaning on them for advice. And Cruz and I are trying to work a date out where we can go and test beforehand, which we really, really want to go and do. Just kind of got to work it out where we can get track time near there beforehand. But I mean, I've turned, I want to say, probably a total of about 4 laps in a midget, and that's about it.
Well, they do say that the midget in today's society, at least, drives closer to the wing sprint car than, say, a non-wing sprint car or micro. So I would assume that wouldn't it be, you see wing sprint car drivers adapt to midgets fairly quicker than most other people, at least.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm just going to go and put my best foot forward and just kind of go from there. I mean, really, I had no expectations, obviously. Like I said, everybody wants to go to the racetrack and win. But, I mean, I'm a realist. Is that going to happen? It could. And I know Cruz has given us great equipment. I'm really looking forward to working with him and Jacob Allen. He's been somebody I've followed since, he started racing in the Outlaws, and I kind of somebody that you can look up to in a sense of being on the road and doing what they're doing.
Well, and I guess in that instance, what Chili Bowl would be the first race of the year. What would be your first winged race next year? And then what would the schedule be with the California car? I saw you still are planning to do some California stuff possibly. Yeah,
so I want to say the first race of the year is always Silver Cup, which is the first weekend of March at Silver Dollar. They have talk and rumor going around about another race coming back that they're going to run, which is a 410 show come middle of March. And then depending on how we're doing, getting stuff ready back in South Dakota, I'm planning on moving middle to end of April, but we'll probably come back and forth for a week or two to run a few select shows out here. If I can run as many races as possible, I'm going to. So if everything works out, I'll run 5 to 8 races before we get racing back in the Midwest.
So no crazy big deal where y'all are going to go and debut in Florida or anything like that at this point?
No talk on that. Our first race, as of right now, should just be the
West
Houston
Coast
opener.
Or, okay, you're talking about with the 10 car, the Husets.
With Nick and them will just be the West Coast, opener out here and handful of races to get the season kicked off.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all we can really talk about. We've had you on here for just about an hour. Anything you'd like to say? You want to comment on the high limit World Outlaw situation? What you got to say? What you got to think?
No, I like to keep to myself on stuff like that and just kind of let it play out and see how things shake with that. I think it's a good event and they're putting up money and they're giving back to the racer. I think that needs to happen more often. Without saying too much, I think that some of the track promoters get in it for themselves too much and not in it for the racer enough. And if the racers aren't there, then your fans aren't there. And I think it kind of, if you get back to the racer a little bit more, then you'd have more cars. That's why you see 60 plus cars at races that pay $5,000 to win.
What do you think of the situation in payouts and what's happening on the late model side of the world? We see a lot of sprint car guys even racing some late model stuff. Have you ever been intrigued on that side of the racing world? I mean, obviously it's a whole beating banging situation.
I haven't followed it too much, to be completely honest with you. Obviously the money is intriguing. They're doing something right over there. When you see all these trucks and trailers roll in and $400,000 toter home and stackers, obviously the money's got to be decent. So whatever they're doing on that side of things, they're doing it right. They're giving back to the racers. And when when the highest paid, late model guys over $1 million and the highest paid sprint car drivers, I don't even think breaks $1 million.
Right.
And then these absolute biggest races of the year.
I think a big contributing factor to that is they have a lot of fans, and they also don't the drivers. And no offense here, because you're from California, they don't live in a Kyle Larson shadow. The biggest sprint car driver name out there is still in the sprint car fan base's eyes. a second-rated talent to Kyle Larson because he's Cole Trickle, NASCAR star, whatever you want to call it. I think this has been happening for a long time. I see the stars of sprint car racing in the last 30 years all being the NASCAR drivers: Gordon, Kane, Stewart, now Larson. Over there, they have no shadow. There's no NASCAR star that shows up and is a bigger fan driver than them. So their fan base supports the stars of the sport more so than the sprint car industry, I think.
Yeah. No, I can agree.
So, if you do get this car going well at the Husets High Bank Nationals, or at Husets, do you think that by the Husets High Bank Nationals that you would be a contender to win that thing? Would you be a guy that you personally think that if you got that car running, you know what you like? It's a situation almost like with your car you got right now over there in California where you think you know what you need to do with it when you need to do with it. Is that a potentiality that you think you could win that race?
I mean, I think anything's possible. I mean, obviously, I'm going to bet on myself and just kind of put my best foot forward. I'm not gonna look into the future that far and say, yeah, hey, we're going to go out and win this show, or hey, no, not a chance. I think we can touch bases back on this once we get racing, and maybe I can give you a straighter answer. But I definitely think that we're going to go put our best foot forward and have a chance.
Definitely. Okay. Well, is there anybody you want to give a shout out to or big thanks for all this happening? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that's made this even possible.
First off, obviously, I got to thank my car owners and my family. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't even be where I'm at today. And as well as you for helping get my name kind of out there, and Kyle Soltesz, and as well as Shane for taking a chance on me. This is something that I've dreamt of as a little kid, and now that things are kind of finally starting to take shape, I don't think that it's completely set in. When I had left South Dakota and the plane took off, and I kind of knew, hey, I had this solidified for next year. I got goosebumps and got a little bit teared up, which if all my family listening know that I'm not exactly the most emotional person, that was kind of a big deal. It's just kind of been something that I've dreamt of since a little kid, and I don't think it's completely set in yet, but I'm sure it will come time that I go and leave my home of California and go back there and take the big leap.
Well, it's definitely a good thing to see, expectations being, superseded just by getting a shot to race in the Midwest and get out of California. 10, 15 years ago, if you didn't make it to NASCAR, you was going to cry. You think your career's over. So it is nice to see that be such a big deal. I feel like you could possibly be a pioneer in this situation of getting out of California, too, by just, instead of, like I said, everybody dreaming to go to PA, now kind of having that Midwest destination. Yeah,
and I mean, hopefully I open up some doors for these other kids that are up and coming, and give them, kind of a gleamer of like, man, if you keep going at it and keep working hard, that, it's possible. Because like I told you earlier, I wasn't 100% sure on where my career was going to go. And one phone call, 2 phone calls later, it kind of changed for the better and could possibly be a career changing thing for me.
All right. Well, I mean, best of luck, I guess, as it is. And, I guess thanks for calling in. I don't want to say you owed me one, but I mean, I'm just been involved.
Yeah,
been involved. I don't feel responsible, but I almost feel like it is responsible for me to be in the stands at Husets, on Facebook Live or something, screaming how Caleb Henry's going to whoop Aaron Reitzel's ass tonight. I feel like that has to come next year.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you in person, and definitely gonna have a shirt with your name on it. So thank you for having me on, and I really appreciate it.
Alrighty, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Caleb Henry right there. We're gonna turn over to the live chat here just a second. I guess From my oh, there we go. We got the music, the sound back. We should have just ended the live then, because it pretty much is over, ladies and gentlemen. We're pretty much over. We're just looking at some of the comments that were obviously already answered. Black Hill Speedway races, etc., all that stuff. I don't know. As far as I know, there's not going to be any. And like Rick said, yeah, he said he was moving to Rapid City. And obviously there at the end of the conversation, we got that answered again. So, thanks for tuning in, everybody. That was a quick little live conversation. We'll try to split this on up. Tomorrow night, be sure to tune on in, because we're going to have another live chat here on the YouTube channel with Donnie Shoults. And with all the things being said right now, and with how Donnie Shoults ain't scared to say anything, I mean, this could be an interesting one, ladies and gentlemen. This could be an interesting one. We are not hold on, we're just going to get Kevin Woody out the screen. Tune in tomorrow night, because this one's going to be good. We're going to have a lot of sound bites to be taken out. I am, for the record, just for the record, I am going to be going to the Gateway Dirt Nationals this weekend. I'll be there Friday and Saturday. So if you are heading down to the Dome this weekend, you can see me there as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. Be sure to tune into that. Be sure to go catch all the Cody Summer content that we've been putting out. A lot of good videos that we had put out. Let me go see if I could show you a little segment that we got here. I mean, there is a lot of stuff. I mean, $200 million renovation project in St. Louis. We talked about dirt draft and gambling. Obviously, Cody Summer, the creator of Dirt Draft. Talked about promoting in big city events. Talked about the Tyler Carpenter NASCAR experience. Why they dropped the midgets. And also his I don't want to say controversial, but very interesting comments on Barry Braun and XR scheduling on top of the Dome, and why he thinks that actually occurred. So go over onto the YouTube channel, check some of that stuff out. Thanks for tuning in to the live stream. Caleb Henry, I think, is going to be a force to be reckoned with at Husets. Chili Bow, it's a toss. You know, we'll see what happens after the heat race. Heat race is everything at the Chili Bow. So that's a whole question mark. But I definitely think that team, this driver, and I just got to see it right off the top of my head at Chico when they was like, hey, you know, anybody else out here? I was like, well, this 17's looking pretty damn badass. I don't know why it's always car 17 out there on the West Coast that catches my attention, and I think that they're a badass driver, but it just seems to always be happening. It just seems to always happen. First time I went out there was a 17 of Sanders, now it's the 17 of Henry. Or the 121, I wish Jovan Schriltz would find something to do with that car. We got to do something about the 121 over there. What we doing, Joe? What we doing? But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. We will catch you tomorrow live here on YouTube with none other than 2022 Knoxville Nationals champion and very honest individual named Donnie Shoults. We will catch you then. Goodbye.